Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day to all. Um, we are from University Technology Petronas, taking KSP 1171 chess in semester January 2021. Our instructor is Mr. Abdul Rahman Muhammad Amin, and our group name is Nakamura. We'll be presenting chess opening. Our group consists 8 people, and so the first is Muhammad Shukri bin Hayatuddin, Edmund Anji Anak Gura, Muhammad Aiman Hakim bin Hasno, Dobran Meredov, Muhammad Ismail bin Mamat, Ko Chi Kit, Teh Kok Ziang, and me, Muhammad Faiz bin Zulkifli. So I will pass the presentation to my friend.
Hello, my name is Dobran Merdov, and in my presentation I'm going to talk about the basic principles of chess game. So the first main principle is that you should always try to control the center. So the boxes e4, d4, e5, and d5 are the most crucial boxes in the entire chessboard. So you have to try to occupy them as soon as possible. You have to occupy as many of the boxes as you can in order to put your opponent in difficult situation, because by controlling these boxes you will be both attacking and defending at the same time. Development is another important rule of the game. It's one of the most important rules of the game. So many players make mistakes by bringing out only one or two pieces and playing with them until they get stuck or captured, and only after that they bring out reinforcement. But actually you have to bring out your bishops and knights right away, and it is recommended that you do these moves in the first 6 or 7 moves. Another important principle of the game is castling. Castling is especially advised for the beginners, as castling allows to protect your king, and especially it secures your king from fool's mate. So once you have developed all of your pieces that were standing between the king and your rook, and the space is free, you can do your castling. And with the 3 pawns in front of your king will be more secured from a checkmate. Next principle is trying to save your queen, because queen is more valuable than any other piece besides the king. And if you bring out your queen too early and it gets mixed with other pieces, the chances of losing her along the way are pretty high. It's absolutely vital not to waste a single move while developing your pieces. If you start moving around the same pieces while the other pieces are still standing on their starting squares, you will lose your tempo. The only time when you can use the same piece twice is when you need to capture an enemy's piece.
My name is Kauchiki, and I would like to start my presentation for the first chess opening of white, which is Vienna game. Vienna game is one of the chess openings for white, that begins with the moves white pawn to e4, then black pawn to e5. After that, white knight to c3. Weaver W. Adams, who is an American chess master, claimed that the Vienna game gave white to a forced win. In the 15th edition of Modern Chess Openings, which was concluded by Nick de Vermeer, he explained that the opening leads to equality with best play by both sides. So from this, if the second move for black is black knight to and f6, this move is called as a 4-bit variation. So in this situation, white has 3 main options. For the first one is f4, white pawn to f4, which is not encouraged for the beginners. The second is white bishop to c4, and the third is white pawn to g3, which is called as Mises variation. If the second move for black is knight white black knight to c6, this move is called as max length defense. In this situation, again, white has three main options. White can move bishop to c4, or white can move pawn to f4, which is called as Gambit, Monsieur Gambit, and Stanley's Gambit. This move is not encouraged for the beginners. And the third move is white pawn to g3, which is called as Poisson variation. This offbeat but playable alternative, which is made by former world champion Josro Capablanca, and this move is to move black bishop to c5. In this situation, white has three possible moves. The first move is to move white bishop to c4, and the second move is to move white knight to f3, and the third move is to move white pawn to f4. For the third move, it is not encouraged for beginners to play.
Hi, my name is Kok Xiang, and I'll be explaining the second white opening, the Italian game. The Italian game is a family of chess opening beginning with the move of e4 and black respond with e5. Next, white move its knight to f3 and black will respond by pushing its knight to c6. Then, white will be moving its bishop to c4. The opening is defined by the development of the white bishop to c4, where it attacks black vulnerable f7 space. From there, we will be able to develop the Italian game into three main branches. But for this presentation, I'll be explaining one, and the next presenter will explain another. So in total, we will be covering two branches. The first branches will be Gioco piano, which means quiet game in Italian. It is one of the chess opening for white in Italian game. The black will respond by pushing its bishop to c5, and there are several options for white to move. The first option would be pushing the white pawn to b4. The second, pushing white pawn to c3. The third, pushing white pawn to d3. And the last one, castling. The classical variation in Italian game is where white moves its pawn to c3. This can help controlling the square of b4 and d4. The second variation is called as Evans Gambit, where white moves its pawn to b4. This is not advisable for beginners to play due to the risk of sacrificing pieces. And the third variation is named as the Gioco pianissimo, which means very quiet game in Italian. This is where white pawn moves to d3 to protect the bishop and another pawn. This happens to avoid the early pressure in exchanging pieces. And the last variation would be castling. This happens is usually to protect the king. That's all from me, Dai Kok Siang. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Ismail Mahmad, and I will be presenting the opening white number 3, that is Evans Gambit. Evans Gambit occurs but is not advisable for beginners to play due to the risk of sacrifice pieces. After the Italian game opening, assuming black move bishop to c5. We should develop by proceeding with b4. The idea of the gambit is to lure the black bishop to b4, where the move c3 can be played with tempo, speeding up white's development and allowing d4 thrust to be played while black is still moving his black bishop around. We can see the black bishop moved to the c5 square, and we lure him with pawn b4. And we assuming he taken the lure, and next move it to be played is c3 to pushing the bishop back into the a5 square. After that, retracing with the d4 and the black will taken the d4 pawn, and the white will do the castling to secure the king positioning. And then the black will respond with knight to e7 to make a move for the king to castling. And while that will interfere the castling with knight to g5. And then the black will move the pawn to d5 to attacking the white bishop. And then we taken the pawn with e5 pawn. And then next is black knight to e5 to attacking the bishop again. And with this, we taken the bishop back to d3 square to attacking the black pieces. And therefore, for the Evans gambit, the game in Evans gambit tend to be sharp and tactical, with white throwing everything he can at the black king, while black hang off on for dear life and hope for survive into the endgame. At the endgame, black will have advantage with the extra pieces he have. Thank you, that's all from me.
Hi, my name is Nakamura, and I'll be presenting the last strategy that we can apply after the Italian game opening. And just like how Evans Gambit benefited white, this strategy will benefit black as well. So now I will be playing as black to show you how we can use this strategy. Right after white move its bishop to c4, which is the last move in the Italian game opening, move our knight to f6, and let's assume white move its knight to g5. Then we move our pawn to d5, and then of course logically white's pawn will capture the pawn at d5, and instead of engaging in attack, which will allow white to use the infamous thread lever attack, which of course later it is possible to be defended. However, after some time it will be quite difficult to fend off and causes a lot of damage to us. So instead of capturing, move our knight to f5, and then this will allow white to check our king and then block its attack by moving pawn to c6. Logically again, white will capture the pawn at c6 to reduce number of pieces, and then counter it by capturing the pawn at c6. So now this will force bishop to e2, and to annoy the opponent, move our pawn to h6, and this will force white to move its knight to f3. Then again push our pawn to e4, and we will again force the knight to move. And now let's assume white move its knight to e5. Then move our bishop to d6, and then of course to back its knight, white will push its pawn to d4, and then let's capture the pawn, and this will allow white to counter by capturing the pawn at d3. And the last move for this strategy to work will be to move our queen to c7. Now, for black, we have an active position with freedom for our pieces and the potential for a kingside attack. However, it is also important to find a way to bring knight at f5 back into attacking position. White will be able to catch up sooner or later. So therefore, it is important for black to develop the game faster and to have more active competitive positions. Therefore, that is all for the two knights defense.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Iman Hakim, and I'm going to share with you the third black opening, which is the Scotch opening. The Scotch opening is a very good opening for beginners, intermediates, and advanced player, and it is very practical since the white play e4, e5, and knight g to f3, and then knight black knight of b play to c6, defending the pawn, and then white play d4. And in this current position, normally the black plays e pawn takes d4 and knight f3 takes d4. And in this position, there's a lot of variation for black to play. And one of the most famous variation is by playing knight g to f6, attacking the e4 pawn and at the same time developing the pieces. And in this position, normally white can play bishop f to b5, and then black can counter by playing bishop to b4, and at the same time attacking the kings. So there's one variation, and another variation for black is when e5 takes d4 and knight f takes to d4, and one of the most tricky variation is that black can play is queen to h4, because in this position, normally for beginners and intermediate, they can get confused. So if they play g6 to attack the queen, you can just take e4 pawn and at the same time checking the king. And another variation, if the white plays bishop knight to c3, defending the pawn, black can start to pin the king by playing bishop to b4, and it still can attacking the king's pawn, which is the e4. If white's queen play d3, and then blacks can play knight to f6, still attacking the pawn, and have two attacking here. Yeah, so that's for the second variation, and that's all for me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Muhammad Shukri bin Hayatuddin from Mechanical Engineering course. So for this part of opening, I will share with you about the French defense opening for black pieces. So what is the French defense? Let's talk about a bit history behind this name. The French defense is named after an 18th century game between the city of London and Paris, in which the French defense was utilized. Okay, let's start learning the French defense. The French defense is when the white start the game with e4, then the black move to e6, preparing to counter the e4 pawn with black d5. After the most typical line of d4, d5, white e pawn is immediately pressured, and white must decide how to deal with this. As you can see here, black block their light square bishop, but gain a solid pawn chain and counter-attacking possibilities. This opening usually beneficial for black, that allowing black to have activity on the queen side and counterplay in the center. From this position, this leads to several variations, including the exchange variation, advanced variation, Tarrasch variation, Villeneuve variation, and classical variation. In addition, before you start playing some opening, you must learn the basic principle in opening first. And for your information also, in a lot of opening variation. Of course, there are pros and cons in every move in chess. So for this French defense, the pros is the sound structure for the black, then sharp counter-attacking possibilities, and the last one is the original type of game. Move on to the cons for this opening is the black has a space disadvantages. Second, the light square bishop is locked in, as I said before, and the last one is sometimes the black pieces can become passive. Okay, that's all from me. I hope you can gain something from this video and enjoy playing chess. Thank you.
So, in the end, from what all my friends have been presented, I can conclude that for the chess beginners, you need to wisely think where you want to move your pieces, and learn any pattern you can find in internet. So that's all from us. Thank you and have a good day.